Okay, I think we get the point. I mean, I was this many days old when I knew that Katy Perry did a song about kissing anybody, quite frankly. Not exactly the kind of music I typically listen to, although I vaguely recalled some song about kissing somebody when Donna, member number 2, by the way, of Farwell's Force on our official list of Farwell Force membership. Number 2, Donna, sent an email this morning to Mike at 570news.com and said, you can use this joke at 9 o'clock if you want to. Katy Perry kissed a former prime minister and she liked it, which made me Google Katy Perry kiss song. Out comes Kiss the Girl. And here you go. I kissed the girl and I liked it. We're not sure yet if indeed KT and JT have locked lips, although what started as a story about a casual yet high-end haute cuisine dinner together in Montreal was followed by the walk with the dog through the park prior to dinner. So you can say what you want about the dinner and how the relationship appeared over dinner. And then you can add to that apparently our former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and the pop singer, Katy Perry, took a little walk with Katy Perry's dog together prior to that dinner. And I don't know. You can put whatever pieces together that you want when it comes to this. Here is your Wednesday morning confession of a rather snobby talk show host. I remember a time that I looked down my nose, I did indeed, in this business at TMZ. I like to emphasize the Z-ness, the Canadianness of that acronym. But I looked down my nose at the reporting from TMZ because it was all just, pop culture, fluff. It wasn't real news. And then it was TMZ that broke the story of Michael Jackson's passing. And I think that was the one that put TMZ on the map as sort of not only reputable, but almost mainstream in a sense. And so yesterday, when I left work here and the stories started to circulate about whatever happened, where do you think I went to look for it? Of course, I went to TMZ. I'll just emphasize that once more. And there was the story. And I do wonder, in my still somewhat snobby, but I think I'm less snobby because I will take the TMZers as the source that they are. But I still wonder, this is where we're at, right? With all of the things that are going on in the world today, we are this curious about the personal relationships of our former prime minister. But I guess the Trudeau apple didn't fall all that far from the tree, right? Because both of Justin's parents were linked to high-profile partners at different times in their lives, I suppose. Anyway, if you're into that sort of thing, if it amuses you in any way, apparently our former prime minister is in the midst of, at the beginning stages of, a relationship with pop singer Katy Perry. Our current prime minister is trying to get a better relationship with the president of the United States. How's that going for us today? All right, let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning, the 30th of July. Number 1, Russian authorities have canceled tsunami warnings for 2 regions in the eastern part of that country after a powerful earthquake struck off the coast earlier today. The 8.8 magnitude earthquake triggered tsunami warnings and alerts for BC's coast as well as Japan and the U.S. BC remains under a tsunami advisory meantime, while warnings have been downgraded in both Hawaii and Japan. Number 2, Canadian premiers are putting pressure on Ottawa to follow through on tougher bail rules promised by the Liberal government. The Liberals have promised those measures will be included in legislation that's expected to be tabled this fall by the Justice Minister. However, critics are expressing worries over Ottawa's plans, saying there's no data to indicate that tougher bail rules are effective. How about this? What if we just tried it and see what happens? By the way, speaking of that, we had an hour in studio yesterday with Waterloo MP Bardish Chagger. And over the course of that hour, as you can imagine, we covered a lot of ground, including tougher bail terms, reforming bail in this country, crime rates, etc. If you missed it, I highly recommend you go back, check out our online archive at kitchener.citynews.ca. Or if you're the app user, we recommend Seeker, Seekr, Seek Your Sounds, and check out the podcast of yesterday's show. And you can listen in on that conversation we had with Waterloo MP Bardish Chagger. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, economists and financial markets largely expecting the Bank of Canada to hold its key policy rate steady at 2.75% this morning at its next decision meeting. The rate decision will come with a new monetary policy report where the central bank is expected to share its outlook for the economy amid persistent trade uncertainty. Number 4, a record number of job seekers have applied to work at Canada's largest fair this summer. The CNE says it has received 54,000 online applications ahead of its job fair, which kicks off later this morning. Organizers say the number of applicants accurately reflects the current labor market. Numbers from Statistics Canada say nearly 1 in 4 teens between 14 and 19 years old in Ontario is unemployed. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, thousands of fans are paying their respects today to Ozzy Osbourne ahead of his funeral in Birmingham. The hearse carrying the body of the Black Sabbath frontman making its way down the major thoroughfare of the English city of Birmingham. That was the music legend's hometown. It will be accompanied by a brass band. That procession, Ozzy's family will hold a private ceremony later. Osbourne died last week at the age of 76. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. We'll take a time out. When we come back, your morning wake-up call. I'm looking at you, Westmount Road. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is the time of the day we issue our daily wake-up call here on the program. And if you've got a call out that you want to make, well, you know that you can use this platform to do just that. Our phone lines are open the minute we begin the show every day. And Jason is on the phone with us. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm
Good.
just curious. I was thinking after you mentioned you had Bardish on, or MP Chagger on your show yesterday, have any of the new MPs reached out to have a conversation with you about their perspectives of what they'd like to accomplish in the region?
No, they have not. Now, in fairness, it was Ms. Chagger that reached out to us. We ran into each other at an event, and she said, I'd love to come on the show and take questions from the audience, etc. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, never actually thought of it. So this was a suggestion from Bardish that we made happen on the show. And because it went as well as it did, I promise you this is something we will do regularly. So in fairness to those new MPs, we haven't offered them the opportunity either. Okay. So, but we will.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, and just give you a little update with my scheduling of a meeting with MPP Dixon. We are in talks of sometime, hopefully in September, but just to give you an update.
And this is on, remind me again, please.
Renovictions.
Renovictions. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Keep up that good work, and please keep us posted.
Great day, Mike. Have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye. Jason Deneau is that Jason. He's the Ward 3. I'm going through the mental Rolodex here. Do you still have Do you know what a Rolodex is? Jason's the Ward 3 councillor in the city of Kitchener. And just to go back to that, as I said, it was just kind of a conversation that Bardish Chagger and I had at an event recently where she expressed an interest in coming on the show, taking questions from you, etc. I hadn't really thought to do that myself, and I probably should have. So this was the beginning. Now, that's not to say that any of our newly elected MPs couldn't ask for the same opportunity. They haven't, but we're going to extend that to our MPPs as well. I think that'll be a neat thing to do, particularly in the summer months when they might have the more time to be here in our studios, et cetera. So we're going to work on that, and I'm already working on getting one of our MPPs on, provincial legislators, before the end of the summer. Same idea. Sit down in studio with us for an hour. Let's talk about provincial issues. Let's allow you the chance to have questions answered, et cetera. And we will certainly extend this across party lines, no question about it. My wake-up call this morning, I said a moment ago, was looking at Westmount Road. That's directly where my attention is. Yesterday, on our wake-up call, I shared with you an idea floated by Guelph Mayor Cam Guthrie when it comes to speed cameras. He wondered if it might not be possible to give somebody a warning of a speed camera violation before a ticket, because these tickets can pile up quickly because of the time it takes to get them in the mail. And at these times of affordability challenges, maybe a warning would be a good start to this. And that led to conversation on the show yesterday about speed cameras in general, to the point that during our Talkback Hour, I guess my buddy Dave was so fed up with it, he sent me an email and said, when are you going to stop flogging this horse? I hear that I'm getting tired of hearing this constantly. I'm going to change my radio station, which I hope you don't do, Dave, but I understand how frustrated you might be. And Dave makes the point. If you speed, you pay. And I get that. But the concern here is the way this program has been implemented. And there's a story on the front page of the Waterloo Region Record today of a man who got a ticket on Westmount Road at Laurentian Public School. But he said with all the construction going on there, it's the signs that show the speed limit and that there is a speed camera in use are obscured. And wouldn't you know, I received a similar email from Al about a week ago. And he said he got the same thing. He even sent pictures of the obscured signs on Westmount Road. This is between Ottawa and Laurentian, or what is that next, Pinedale? Anyway, it's, you know where we're talking about here. Ottawa and Westmount area. On Westmount, there's a speed camera. And Al even shared the pictures in his email about the signs that show the speed camera in use, the actual posted speed limit obscured by all of the construction. And he wondered if he should fight the ticket or just accept it. Now, I'm no lawyer. I said, listen, if you got the time and the energy, you go right ahead and fight that. But the challenge is it's not that folks are saying that we think we are above the law. They are saying the way you have implemented this program is unfair. It makes it seem a whole heck of a lot more like a revenue generator than a safety improvement. And Byron sends an email this morning to Mike at 570news.com. He says, we should know to what speed the cameras are calibrated. And he believed they should be calibrated at 50 kilometers per hour in 30 or 40 zones. So drivers can adjust their speed below 50. I don't know, like 30 to 50 is a 20 kilometer over the speed limit calibration. I don't think you're going to get any kind of leniency like that. I don't think you'd get that kind of leniency on a residential street anyway from a police officer. But these cameras are excellent pieces of technology to be where police officers cannot physically be. What we need to work on here is the way we've rolled them out and the times of day that the cameras are active, and then the times of year, quite frankly, because if you're getting caught in a 30 zone or a 40 zone on Westmount Road because there's a school there in July, I'm not sure safety is the paramount issue that we're dealing with here. We're going to take a break. When we come back, you know how they say you learn something new every day? Well, sometimes you learn something new listening to this show. I know I did earlier this week. I'll share that with you coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. One of my favorite things about being a part of a show like this is what I get to learn on a daily basis from the guests that we have on the show to share expertise on various issues. And every once in a while, I get to learn something directly from you. That was the case the other day, right at the end of the show on Monday. If you missed it, Dylan gave us a call and shared this interesting tidbit.
I take a hard-boiled egg every day to work. I've been trying for months to get the perfect peeler so that when you peel the egg, shell comes off and you're left with the entire egg. Anyways, I watched a video this weekend, and it was an older lady teaching me how to make hard-boiled eggs. So you take your egg, before you put it in the water, you take the back of a spoon, you tap the bottom of the egg. You're not cracking the shell, but tap, 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 and you will hear a snap sound. And what that is it's the membrane breaking inside the egg. Then you boil the egg as you normally would, and I had my first egg using that system this morning, and it was a perfect peeler.
I got to tell you, taking a spoon and tapping the bottom of the egg seemed a little bit odd to me. I was very worried that the egg would crack itself, not just the membrane inside. But you know what? We put Dylan's theory that he got from the elderly lady on YouTube to the test in the Farwell household last evening. And sure as the day is long, tap, 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 there's that little snapping sound. You boil the egg, you peel the egg, and just like Dylan, a perfect peel. Because, like Dylan, I too bring hard-boiled eggs to work with me every day. I'm sure my coworkers love it because there's no particular odor that goes with a hard-boiled egg. But ding dang it, it's a good handy little snack to have around. And if you tap, tap, tap the bottom of the egg, you'll snap that membrane even before you hard-boil it, and it will peel like a dream. You learn something new every day. And thanks to Dylan, we've put his theory to the test, and it works just fine in the kitchen. There is your hard-boiled egg hack, courtesy of the Mike Farwell Show. We're going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then let's talk statues and their return to the Prime Minister's path in Wilmot. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers. Township Council in Wilmot is brand spanking new. I mean, as new as a council coming up on the fourth year of its four-year mandate can still be considered new. But it was a complete turnover from the previous council in the 2022 municipal election. And this council in Wilmot inherited its share of contentious issues, including the Prime Minister's path. You'll remember this collection of statues of former prime ministers in a park outside the township offices in Baden was the subject of a great deal of conversation and scrutiny. And the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald, in fact, was doused with red paint a number of times. That led to the statues being put away and a community consultation being undertaken. Well, Township Council in Wilmot voted unanimously earlier this week to return the statues to that same area outside the township offices in Baden. Mayor Natasha Salonen joins us to talk about it. And Mayor Salonen, can we just take a couple of steps back here and talk about the work that the township has undertaken in order to get us to this point?
Absolutely. There's the historical context before this council, of course, that the Prime Minister's path was brought to Wilmot, and there was a project scope there. And then the last council, of course, came to a decision after the paint being thrown on Sir John A. Macdonald to place the statues into storage. And they had done that on consultation that during the election, the now council has found people weren't super satisfied with the engagement, regardless of where their opinions lied. So this council, what we have done is we heard pretty loud and clear that people want this to come to a resolution. So we engaged, we did an RFP to reach out, find an organization that could come in and do public consultation, but not just consultation, but really help build the divide that our community saw after the events of the statues being removed. So Laura was the successful consulting firm, and they formed a working group which was made up of residents of the Township of Wilmot with varying perspectives on the project as well as various different backgrounds. And they then brought forward in May the recommendations from over 10 months of community engagement. And then council last night, the whole time in the background, we have been hearing from residents and people outside of Wilmot as well of their perspectives too. And all of that fed into the final decision, which council unanimously made to move the project forward, but with quite a few, I think, thoughtful stipulations going forward to ensure respectful civic dialogue, and that this becomes a meaningful project versus just a simple replacement of statues.
What role will council and township staff play in the management of this project moving forward?
So the motion was pretty clear in terms of staff's role would not be for their role would only be maintaining the park. And then, of course, like any community group, staff are there from an advisory perspective, but staff are by no means the ones running this. And then from a council perspective, there is also in the motion a report back structure. So from a public committee that council gets to decide who is on it, and it's application based. So from that, council has involvement, as well as there's a reporting back, I believe it's 4 times a year to council. But beyond that, it is going to be an arm's length, very much like in other communities you might see friends of whatever society or project. It'll very much be like that and run in its own structure with the mandate that council has provided in its most recent motion yesterday.
You mentioned, Mayor Salonen, that this is a meaningful way of continuing the project, perhaps more meaningful than the first time when statues were just kind of appearing on this Prime Minister's path outside the township offices. What is it that makes it more meaningful this time around?
Well, I think in part the process. So this council, we were faced with a national issue, but in a local lens because of decisions to bring this path here. We've also heard that, the vision apparently was always to have education, and for various different reasons that never came to fruition. So what we've done is we really heard and listened to the community, but through broad consultation and I think the leadership of council really on wanting to hear all different perspectives, which I think our consultant, although they didn't speak to every person in Wilmot, did a really great job at hearing all of the diverse voices and possible thoughts about the project. We've now put forward a motion to ensure that that will be reflected in the educational Prime Minister's path being brought forward. And I think really it goes to a fact that it forged public trust, the process that we did, whereas before public trust, a lot of the issues were created by the divide of the statues, and I think this process really helped rebuild some of those bridges and has created, we're hoping, a space for truthful dialogue and the responsibility to learn from our history.
You mentioned Sir John A. Macdonald's name earlier, too, and I know that the statue of our first Prime Minister will be treated differently on the path this time around. How will it be treated differently and why?
So before, in the setup in Wilmot, I'm not certain if every viewer's been out to Wilmot or not, every listener, but Sir John A. Macdonald's statue was out at the front facing our main street in Baden, and he was separate from where the rest of the Prime Minister's path was, which is in a park that's behind our administrative building. So he's going to be moved with the rest of the statues, and the motion also has that he will be put in a place where he can be viewed, but that it needs to be the individual's choice to go see him. And this really was informed by the engagement throughout the community, and this was feedback that we heard to make it, again, intentional if you want to see his statue.
One of the other things that caught my attention during this meeting and the ultimate decision is that private funding sources would be sought and the township would not be spending money on this moving forward. What if you can't get that private funding or those grants?
So I think that that's a bridge council will have to cross if we get to that point. Certainly from all of the discussion that we've heard both locally and nationally, and I think including even last night from some of our delegations, there is interest from a financial funding perspective, as well as the project originally was funded privately. And so the township, until the removal of statues, didn't pay for anything beyond the maintenance either. So I do think that there is still an appetite there. However, if it comes to the fact that there is not an appetite to get enough funding to make this come to fruition, then council will have to decide where to go next. But again, I say that that's a bridge that we cross if that comes to fruition.
Speaking of crossing bridges, how does it feel to get to the other side of what was a very contentious and at times divisive issue in your community?
You know what? It feels really great. And I recognize that not everyone is going to be pleased with council's decision. But I think the real legacy here is that this council was able to lead a process and frankly make a decision that wasn't just about bronze statues, but like I said, about public trust, and that we went back out to the public and really thoroughly heard and engaged, and I think created a process forward that's representative of those voices. And we really let the community shape the outcomes, which at the end of the day is what our democracy is. So from that, I'm really pleased. I'm also pleased. I know I spoke to you before the election, and this was one of the items and issues that were hot topic. I know lots of other things have happened since this term has started, but really happy to be able to see this one come to a close in terms of having a formal direction forward.
Mayor Salonen, we appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Natasha Salonen is the mayor of Wilmot Township, joining us to talk about that unanimous decision earlier this week at Wilmot Township Council, Monday night's meeting, whereby it was determined that the Prime Minister's path would return. The statues in storage coming out of storage, and the path will be, or the work on the project will be continued, because there has not yet been a statue created for every one of our former prime ministers. This project has been stalled, as you well know. And it makes me wonder if we also think about the fact that the cladding, the box that Sir John A. Macdonald's statue at Queen's Park was in for about 5 years, has now also been removed. I know it's too late to put the name back on a school in Waterloo, but I'm just wondering, and elsewhere, it wasn't just Waterloo where Sir John A. Macdonald's name was scrubbed away. But I'm wondering if maybe this is an indication that cancel culture is over. Is it diminished? I mean, we also now have the story of the right-wing singer, I don't know what to describe him as, that's being banned from performing at even a church in Montreal, for example, but venues across this country. I don't know, but I'm wondering, just Sir John A. is on display again at Queen's Park. He'll be on display again in Wilmot, albeit in a different location on that Prime Minister's path. Maybe we've just, we're done with the cancelling. And instead we're going to provide some historical context in this case. Just an initial thought from me. Always happy to hear thoughts from you on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I think really it goes to a fact that it forged public trust, the process that we did, whereas before public trust, a lot of the issues were created by the divide of the statues, and I think this process really helped rebuild some of those bridges and has created, we're hoping, a space for truthful dialogue and the responsibility to learn from our history.
Wilmot Mayor Natasha Salonen joining us this morning to talk about the return of the statues of former Canadian prime ministers that have been in storage for a couple of years now after controversy erupted upon a focus on the rather complicated, to say the very least, legacy of one Sir John A. Macdonald. Nation builder, yes. Founder of the residential school system and all that it meant in very negative ways to our Indigenous population? Also, yes. For what it's worth, I think Wilmot Township has got it right here in striking the balance that it has struck. I know not everybody's going to agree with the decision, just like not everybody agreed with the decision that the statues be removed at all when they were. Not everybody agrees. In fact, I watched that council meeting the other night, and I saw a former mayor from the township, Wayne Roth, talk about the act of vandalism that was the dousing in red paint of the statue. And he condemned that activity in his remarks to council on Monday night. So it is absolutely an issue that people take sides on, and you're not going to find universal agreement with. But where I think Wilmot gets this right is in two ways. One is providing the educational component, the historical context around these statues, these prime ministers and their legacies, such as they were. That's an important piece of this. And the other part where I think Wilmot really gets this right is relocating the Sir John A. statue to a different part of the park. So if you're interested in it, you can certainly seek it out, but it won't be front and center, so to speak, just as you're approaching the township offices, as an example. This whole project, my goodness. I mean, look, I've shared this with you before. I remember in advance of our sesquicentennial, our 150th anniversary. So we're going back about a decade because we just did 158 for Canada, right? So this was before the 150. Could have been as many as 2 years before. I don't remember exactly. But what I do remember vividly is the conversation around these statues, this project, which is funded by private interests that just want to share this history. But this project was going to be put into Victoria Park in Kitchener. And there was great enthusiasm with it from within City Hall. And we all know what's happened since. That Sir John A. statue, for a time, stood in the entryway to the museum in downtown Kitchener. Then it was at Wilfrid Laurier University. And talk about complicating the complicated. How about Laurier's somewhat sketchy past in way? I mean, my goodness. And then from there, here we are now in Wilmot Township, where I think that the council there has struck the right balance. But, you know, and I think I'm going to have time for this. I listened with great interest to a conversation. It was more casual conversation that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, he was kind of interviewed at a meeting in Saskatchewan earlier this week. And he said something interesting about earlier in his political career, what he wished he had known or had done differently. I think it applies here. And it really caught my ear. I'll share it with you just after this on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, I got to hustle here, but former Prime Minister Stephen Harper on the Speaker's Tour was in Saskatchewan earlier this week. I listened in on the onstage conversation. It was very interesting in so many ways, and I'll share audio with you through the show today. In fact, more before 10:30 this morning. But here's something that the former Prime Minister said about what he wished his younger self knew. And I think it applies to the conversation we just had about Prime Minister statues in Wilmot Township.
When I was young, although I was conservative, when I say idealistic is the wrong word, I was impatient, not just idealistic, but impatient, and most important of all, not sufficiently understanding and forgiving of human frailty, which I think is the real problem with idealists and, quote, zealots. It's not that it's wrong to have ideals, but what's wrong is to see yourself and maybe your team as, totally kind of dedicated to ideals and other people as somehow flawed because they are not the same way. We are people, we're complicated. Politics is complicated. Everybody has their own perspectives and their own interests. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't have ideals, but ideals can't just bulldoze over people. They have to understand that, especially when you're talking about governing people, it's about governing in their interests and from their perspectives. And you've got to understand that it cannot be just about you and your ideals. And I think when I was young, I was just not sufficiently accepting and forgiving of other people's perspectives and frailties, for that matter.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper at a speaking engagement earlier this week in Saskatchewan. We'll hear more from that engagement before 10:30 this morning. Right now to the 570 News Centre for an update, and then minding Ottawa's business with the Blacklocks reporter. The sordid and twisted tale of the Confederation Bridge. That and more coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wednesday mornings at this time, we check in with our friends at the Blacklocks Reporter. It is the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom covering our nation's capital. It is subscription-based and well worth that. Visit blacklocks.ca. Get one of your own subscriptions, that is, and then understand even more about just some of the stories that we talk about each and every week at this time with the managing editor at Blacklocks, Tom Korski. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Mike.
I must be honest, quick background. I have romantic memories of the Confederation Bridge. Many a year ago, Tom, I took a trip across that bridge. I was so excited. I had some PEI lobster for lunch when I got to the other side. This was a great piece of infrastructure. And this week, a great news story for the federal government, or so I thought, lowering tolls, opening up access to Canada, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a rather twisted tale connected to this bridge, is there not?
It is a very pretty bridge, but the less you know about the bridge, the happier you will be.
I was happy until you came along, Korski. I was happy.
Taxpayers built that. It cost $1 billion, and then they leased it to a private operator. And the investors in that privately run bridge have included, for instance, the husband of the now Foreign Minister, Anita Anand. They guaranteed the bridge operator a minimum amount of toll revenue, regardless of the number of vehicles that pass the bridge. And when the Prime Minister announced on Monday that he was going to cut the tolls in half, all that means is John Q. Sucker taxpayer is sending a bigger check to the private operators of the toll bridge. They won't say how much, and now they've sealed all the records on the Confederation Bridge toll compensation until 2026, almost 2027. So they don't want taxpayers nosing around to find out the real story about this very pretty bridge that is, frankly, a guaranteed income plan for anybody who got on the inside.
And that income is, well, I mean, as you said, it's guaranteed. So we're just going to pay more of it because the tolls have been slashed in half.
They could eliminate all traffic on the bridge, and you're still going to be paying tolls. The margin, by the way, the Budget Office looked at this a few years back, and they had to take a guess because none of this information is made public. They figured a 54% margin. 54%. General Motors, in their best day, makes 12%. Who makes 54% on their air quotes investment? If you got in on the ground floor of this little scam at taxpayers' expense. It's unbelievable, Mike.
It was a pretty bridge, Tom. It so really pretty. Was. Speaking of taxpayers, Canada Revenue has conducted some in-house research and found that there is cynicism of our tax system, you don't say.
Very deep cynicism, but you know, it troubles them. That's the interesting part, that they keep polling these questions. What does the revenue agency do? They hired some researchers to hold focus groups. And they ask ordinary T1 tax filers and small business and some accountants and bookkeepers, how are we doing? And they get the most recent response comes back and says there's this growing cynicism that the system soaks the middle class, and that if you are rich, undefined, if you're rich, how did they put it? Rich people have an easier time tax cheating than middle-class Canadians, end of quote, because, of course, they can hire tax attorneys that do bill by the hour. Canada Revenue Agency, I know this is, people accept this with bitter irony. They actually worry when you say things like that in focus groups because the whole system is built on the honor basis. We must self-report our income because we're good citizens and we think that Ottawa won't waste the money. And when they see these surveys that point to creeping cynicism, they get very upset. You would say, well, so stop wasting money. Well, that's another bridge too far, Mike.
Oh, bridges, they just keep coming up today for some reason. I think we have the makings of a new reality show, thanks to your reporting at Blacklocks from Global Affairs Canada. Could we call this show Diplomats Behaving Badly, by chance?
Fraud, embezzlement, theft. My favorite was the kickback scheme. There was an unnamed diplomat working in a Canadian mission abroad who figured out that he could overpay a certain locally hired staff, which is a very common practice, and then get the long-suffering employees to kick back their raises to his personal account. Ironically, 22 Canadian diplomats fired last year on 120 complaints deemed valid. That's a very high ratio. Number of police called, 0. MPs and senators have gone to jail for less, Mike, but they don't like calling the police on their own employees.
It's like we talk in this province about the Special Investigations Unit and police investigating police. So that's okay. We'll trust Global Affairs to investigate global affairs, right?
The worst punishment they mete out is firing. In 2 cases, one was the kickback scheme I mentioned. They said they were taking legal, that would be a civil court claim, to recover some of the taxpayers' funds that were stolen by a diplomat representing Canada abroad. It's pretty shabby.
All right. We know that the situation in the Middle East continues to get headlines, but right here at home, in-house, so to speak, the two chambers can't seem to agree on whether or not we as a nation export any weaponry to Israel. Cabinet says one thing, the Red Chamber says another.
What's interesting is those in the Red Chamber are all Liberal appointees. And they again, yesterday, this is over a quarter of the Senate, 26 senators, all Liberal appointees, signed a petition and said Cabinet must stop all exports of arms to Israel, weaponry to Israel. And Cabinet has said over and over, and I mean as recently as Monday, we don't export weaponry to Israel. Any sales are quite modest. Last year, about $70 million. That's not a lot of money. What did we sell? Radar parts, satellite software, circuit boards, GPS anti-jam technology. That's not hurting anyone in Gaza. And here you have 26 senators. Our question is, Mike, these are not people off the street. You're the Senate. If you feel this strongly about it, you think Cabinet's lying, come back from your summer holiday for 13 weeks, have lots of committee hearings, get the Deputy Foreign Minister down and give him a very good grilling in committee. Or do you just want to issue ironic news releases? They decided to go with iron.
The chance they had to build bridges with Cabinet, missed opportunity there, Tom.
Holiday time, Mike.
Tom, enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski, managing editor at Blacklocks Reporter. Check it out for yourself at blacklocks.ca. I know you'll like what you find. It's the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom covering our nation's capital, and we bring you a little bit of Ottawa's business every Wednesday morning at 10 with Tom Korski, managing editor at Blacklocks, right here on the Mike Farwell Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I mentioned just before the 10 a.m. update that audience that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper held captive earlier this week at a speaking engagement in Saskatchewan. And naturally, as somebody, former Prime Minister Harper, who has long been incredibly supportive of free and open trade between nations, he weighed in on the goings-on between Canada and the U.S. And the world as the clock ticks towards that August 1st trade deadline here in Canada to get a deal with the United States. We'll hear more from a former prime minister as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. For those of you keeping score at home, thank you for keeping us in check, holding us to account here on the show. I never like it when I have to let you down on a promise to deliver, but when I promoted the show earlier today online and elsewhere, I said that we would be talking about that issue of summer camps being live streamed in various community facilities this summer. And it was kind of an inadvertent live stream. The campers certainly didn't know they were being caught on camera. These were cameras set up to record minor hockey games, which was understood and allowed by the participants. But these cameras, for some reason, were left active through these summer months clear across our region. The cities of Waterloo, Kitchener, and Cambridge have all come forward to share what had happened and what is now happening as a result. Unfortunately, our guest from a law firm that was scheduled to join us just within the last 15 minutes or so had to back out for what they call ethical reasons. So I have to take them at their word. They would know in their profession, but we're not going to be able to do a deeper dive into that. And I will say, when we first talked about this story, just kind of in passing last week when we first started learning of it, I was relatively dismissive of the implications overall. I didn't think it would amount to a whole heck of a lot because it wasn't likely that the live stream link was even active or being broadcast anywhere, et cetera. Well, we've since learned that the link was active. You had to be a subscriber to this live barn system in order to view that link. But still, those cameras were recording. It was being streamed to a web server somewhere. And methinks with the widespread nature of this, we have not heard the end of the story, to say the very least. In the absence of that guest, let me share with you more of, because I was quite intrigued listening to former Prime Minister Stephen Harper at this speaking engagement earlier this week in Saskatchewan. And as you probably remember, Stephen Harper, as our Prime Minister, was very much a proponent of free trade. So naturally, during this speaking engagement with a business audience in Saskatchewan, the issue of Canada-U.S. relations came up and how we can go about getting our very best deal with our neighbors to the south. And here is, among other things, what former Prime Minister Harper had to say about getting a deal done.
You know, it should be under no illusion. Like I'm an economist, and I'm actually not, my specialty was fiscal policy and economic history. And comprehensive protectionism, the idea of using tariff barriers to raise revenue and comprehensively relocate industries, like this is a failed economic policy where it has been tried. And so I am worried about that general direction. We're sort of indirectly talking about President Trump and the Art of the Deal, which is a good book, by the way. But, actually, I did a bunch of political deals and trade deals, and now I do business deals. And I actually think I'm a pretty good deal maker. And the key to deal making is win-win. Like that's really the key to deal making. When I hear people say that their idea of a deal is they can get up on a podium and explain how the other guy lost, like that's actually not how you make a deal. I always used to say, I never made a deal with anybody without, first of all, trying to understand before I got to the bargaining table what the other guy really wanted and needed. And then being able to, on the day we announced the deal, political, trade, whatever, being able to say not just why we won, but why he won too.
Almost a compliment there from former Prime Minister Stephen Harper to U.S. President Donald Trump. The Art of the Deal was a good book, by the way, but certainly the former Prime Minister sees the writing on the wall, if you will, when it comes to the United States and its place in the world today under the leadership of Donald Trump.
The United States is still, by any measure, the most powerful country in the world. And it is also, I think by any measure, the most desirable major partner, not just for Canada, but for most countries in the world. But there is a view taking hold in the present administration that sort of sees the world as everybody needs America, but America doesn't need anybody. And like I tell you, that's not true. That just isn't true. I said that, the Trump administration is completely right to deal with some of its trade challenges, but declaring a trade war on 200 other countries at the same time? I mean, come on. Like, that's not how you move the ball forward long term.
And we are in the short term facing that August 1st deadline. That's Friday to get a deal done, a new trade deal with the U.S. It's unlikely that deadline is going to be held. We'll see what happens, but we continue to follow with interest because these are very interesting times in the world when it comes to trade. And our biggest trading partner has become much less a partner and much more a bully, at least from where I sit. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. KW Kiwanis is back with another Kids Day, offering fun for the whole family at Kiwanis Park in Kitchener. Comes up this Saturday, which is August the 2nd. Steve Rand is the marketing director for KW Kiwanis. Steve, tell us more about what happens on Kids Day.
The city of Kitchener has kindly given us access to the park and is going to give us the proceeds for the day. But the usual swimming is going to be replaced by a lot of free activities, including free food while supplies last, popcorn and ice pops and that sort of thing. But the main activity is swimming, plus the backyard games and entertainment that we're going to provide, which will be free. One of the headliners is Eric Traplin. You probably know about him. He's a local children's entertainer. He'll be playing at 3:30 in the afternoon on August 2nd.
It wouldn't be a day for kids without Eric Traplin being involved. Simple as that.
I think that's correct, yep.
So you mentioned, Steve, Saturday, August the 2nd is the day. It runs from 11 until 5. Eric Traplin will perform at 3:30. Why does Kiwanis do this?
Kiwanis is a service organization which runs projects throughout the year to mostly with a focus on kids. Our other programs are scholarships and KW Kiwanis Music Festival. We even do fundraisers like the recent Waterloo Regional Health Network Gala that was run together with the Rotary Club to raise funds for the hospital. But the Kids Day is sort of more of a family celebration, I would say, that we run in order to give back to the community after all these other activities that we run throughout the year.
Is there a cost to attend?
The way it's run is that the usual admission to the park, which is mostly for swimming ordinarily, will be charged. So it's whatever the numbers are. It's between $10 and $25, I think, on the website. But the difference is that the Kiwanis Kids Day will include the entertainment and activities, bouncy castle all day, and there are going to be drumming circles run by Bandology, and I mentioned Eric Traplin will perform at 3:30. And we provide food trucks and backyard games and so on. So it's quite a bit more than the usual for the usual admission price. We want to thank our sponsors, too, because Ford Motors has been very generous in supporting this. It's Ford Motors GM on Weaver Street in the city of Kitchener, and Costco. It's a community organization that's come together here behind this whole thing.
Looking forward to another great day. Saturday, August the 2nd from 11 until 5 at Kiwanis Park. Steve, thanks for everything you and Kiwanis do, and thanks for joining the show today.
We thank you for your time.
I can't believe Saturday is August the 2nd. Steve Rand, Marketing Director for KW Kiwanis. Details on Kids Day at kwkiwanis.org. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. You may recall earlier this month, we all went out to Petersburg. And I do mean we all went out to Petersburg. It was a virtual who's who of Waterloo Region, including the mother of the mayor of Wilmot Township volunteering some time. It was the 21st annual, that is, Bechtold Childhood Cancer Barbecue. And it's hard to imagine this going on for more than 2 decades now. But the support that we saw on July the 10th in Petersburg was something else. And I have a feeling there will be a 22nd annual Bechtold Childhood Cancer Barbecue. But we'll maybe learn more about that as we welcome our good friend Warren Bechtold, the founder of this barbecue, back to the show. Warren, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Have you recovered? Have you rested up? That was a busy day on July the 10th.
It took a few days, but we did recover, and we're ready for next year.
You are already ready for next year. I thought I heard you mention a date while I was there back on July the 10th.
Yeah, next year it will be July 9th, 2026. And the sunshine and everything's already pre-ordered.
I love it. Okay, so mark down July the 9th of next year, 2026, because, as I said, this barbecue is a who's who of Waterloo Region, and it's all in support of childhood cancer, care for cancer, research, etc., in our community and beyond. Let's talk about the results, Warren. How did it all go this year?
Well, at the end of the night on July the 10th, we were at 27,295, which was below last year's total. But again, knowing the economy and everybody's situation is different. And then a week ago, we sent out a thank you to everybody that we had emails for and donated. And at that point on July the 23rd, our total was 33,238. And Mike, other than the family, it's the first time we're saying it publicly. As of today, our total is $38,438.
That is amazing, Warren. Over 38,000.
Yeah, it's the highest we've ever been, and it's so grateful to corporate people, individuals for donating and making it a success, because no different than your fundraising, Mike, if people don't support, it doesn't happen. And we're just so grateful for all the donations, but also to our family for working. Our grandchildren are involved, and they're bringing their friends to help. And as you said, the mayor's mother was there, and we had a group that played music for us, and we've got a second band that's wanting to do it next year. So it's just growing, and we'll grow with it.
Can you take us back 21 years, Warren, when all of this started? Why did you start doing this?
Well, Mike, I'm 72, and now you're asking me to go back in memory. But the reason we started, I'm still involved with the Optimist Service Club, and I had been asked in the early 2000s to go around to different Optimist districts across North America and ask them to take on the fight of childhood cancer. And then when we built our current shop on our current location, my wife Bernice and I talked that if we're asking other people to do things for childhood cancer, we should lead by example. And we started back in 2004. No idea that we'd be where we are today, but through everything, you help people. Sometimes you know it, sometimes you don't. And Mike, there's a young lady you've met at some of the functions, most recently at the ball hockey tournament, but a mother phoned or emailed us 3 years ago and said her teenage daughter has cancer. Are we having a program? She would want to speak. We decided to have a program, and she came out and spoke and has been in attendance for the last 3 years. And on August the 14th, she's ringing the bell that she's done her cancer treatment and turning the page in her life. And all we did is give her a venue to speak, and those are the good things, helping people whether you know them or not.
That's absolutely what it's all about. And something I noticed when I got to spend time with you all back on July the 10th, Warren, is how much work goes into all of this? You mentioned even the grandkids getting involved. I know your local Optimist Club gets behind this, but can you share what goes into, I mean, it's not just showing up on one afternoon and flipping some burgers and turning some hot dogs here. There's a lot of preparation for this every year.
Well, that's all that's required for you, Mike, is just showing up and flipping the burgers or the hot dogs.
You know my abilities. That's why, Warren.
Yeah. But we usually get going 4 months ahead. We start making contact with, as you said, my local Optimist Club, Petersburg and New Hamburg support us with equipment and tents. We start sending emails out to all our customers and suppliers all across Canada and into the U.S. for support. And then we start coordinating the volunteers to work in shifts over the course of the day. And this year we fed somewhere over 700 people. And it's just a lot of sometimes work, but fun work. I have to do less because our daughters Stacy and Stuart do more. Bernice does an awful lot as well. And then it's just people volunteering to help. And it's fun and it's gratifying when you hear the story about that young lady and others that have beaten cancer and have a new life ahead of them.
With the 38,000 plus that you raised this year, Warren, any idea how much over the 21 years this barbecue has raised for cancer?
We don't have accurate numbers from the first couple years because I guess you could say we never thought it would continue on to where it is. But the number that we have that is, I'm going to say within probably a couple $100, as of today, we're at $356,935.88. And that's split pretty well equally between Waterloo Region Health Network, Scotland Yard, Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto, and London Children's Hospital, all going for childhood cancer. And every dime that's come in from food or donation sales goes out. Nothing ever has paid expenses. That's covered by the business or if we get some corporate donations.
We are certainly lucky to have you and the family in the community doing this, Warren. Congratulations on another huge success. And I've got July 9th in my calendar for next year. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
We would hope to have you there, and we'll support you again on your hire program, and we'll make you work a little harder next year on flipping burgers.
That's a deal. That's a deal, Warren. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thank you very much, Mike, for all your support.
Warren Bechtold is the founder of the annual barbecue that raises money for childhood cancer, with Bechtold Home Improvements as well. It was something else. If you haven't been before, put it in your calendar now. I've just done the same. July 9th, 2026. Support this awesome initiative in Petersburg and raise money for important causes in our communities. It is just a feel-good afternoon, and you get some food to boot. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, your Wednesday Farwell report. The mayor of Cambridge signs on to a letter that appeals to the federal government to reconsider a mandate. Which mandate? And you've heard of sibling rivalry, but have you heard of it like this? It's coming up in your Farwell report on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You have heard the news. Now let's go beyond those headlines, catch up on some of the things you might have missed and put our own little twist on it. We'll start with the mayors of 48 cities and towns in Ontario's automotive regions who are calling on the federal government to end those minimum sales targets for zero emissions vehicles. The letter released yesterday by this group of 46 mayors reads, and I'll quote, "The automotive sector is a key driver of employment and innovation across Canada and in the communities we represent. Self-inflicted harm through damaging and redundant regulations jeopardize jobs and investments in our communities. The group urges the government to instead foster the adoption of EVs with what they call a market-driven approach using industry-approved strategies. And if you think of a group of 48 mayors in automotive regions in Ontario, it probably will not surprise you that one of the signatories to that letter is the mayor of Cambridge, Jan Liggett. Speaking of Cambridge, did you hear the one about the baseball game? Called on account of shells. No, not the peanut shells after you get your peanuts and Cracker Jack. Turtle shells, as in the snapping turtles that were found digging a nest on the pitcher's mound and near the bench on Optimus Field at Riverside Park. Good job by the city of Cambridge. They tried to hatch a plan, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, to incubate the eggs, relocate them to an animal care shelter, but the shelter had no room. There was no room at the inn, so the turtles will play out the string where they are on the ball field, and that means the use of the field is lost for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Just in case you lost track of this story, it's still a thing. Voting by 53,000 workers with Canada Post continues. The members of the union will wrap up voting on this, quote, final offer from the Crown Corporation on Friday afternoon. A vote in favor would bring to an end 18 months of labor unrest at Canada Post, but there's not exactly a lot of optimism around a vote in favor. A labor studies professor from York University thinks the offer will be rejected partly on its contents, but also just on principle. About 70% of workers have voted so far. I came across this story, and I'm really trying to think. I'm trying to think of the best comparison here to bring it closer to home. So how about this? Imagine you go to a Kitchener Rangers game, and while you're there, you see Tex getting arrested by Waterloo Regional Police. I'm talking about Tex, the Rangers mascot. Now, cover the kids' ears for a second here. Not the person inside the mascot suit, but imagine Tex, the mascot, being led out of the odd in handcuffs. That's the best comparison I can come up with for what happened this week in Florida, where police arrested Chuck E. Cheese, not the restaurant, but the mascot himself. It followed an investigation into a stolen credit card. The suspect in that case identified as an employee at the restaurant. So police go to the restaurant. They find the suspect outside. They have a brief conversation with him, verifying that indeed he was the person identified in the theft. Then the employee goes back inside. And when police go inside the restaurant, they find that the employee has once again put on his Chuck E. Cheese mascot's costume, which I guess that was his job at the restaurant. I don't know. And he wouldn't take it off during the arrest. So we have reports from eyewitnesses or ear witnesses that one of the arresting officers grabbed the man's arm and said, "Come with me, Chucky," before leading the man/mascot out of the restaurant. Diners were watching as Chuck E. Cheese himself was led away in handcuffs, and upon arriving at the police car, his head, like the mascot head, was removed and placed on top of the police vehicle. All of this while diners looked on, including the kids who came not just for the pizza, of course, but to see Chucky. I mean, how do you unsee that? The mascot led away in handcuffs and then his head placed on top of the police vehicle. And finally, you've heard of sibling rivalry, right? Well, a family in Guelph just said, "Hold my beer." Guelph police called to a family gathering on Saturday night where they found two men outside fighting. But these guys, they weren't just throwing haymakers. It wasn't a fist fight, like a good old-fashioned hockey fight, right? No. One man was using a shoe and a piece of wood to hit the other man. This after damaging property and threatening other family members. Now, you know what you say when you're hitting someone with a piece of wood, right? Nailed it. My bark, worse than your bite. But a shoe? Beating someone with a shoe? Now you're just a heel. I mean, come on. You've got no soul if you're beating someone with a shoe. A 34-year-old Guelph man is charged with 2 counts of assault with a weapon, assault, mischief, and uttering threats to cause damage. That is your Farwell report for a Wednesday morning. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a Wednesday morning, and that means a number of things happen regularly on the show. We heard earlier from Tom Korski with the Blacklocks reporter. What a story about the Confederation Bridge down in Atlantic Canada. If you missed it, check it out on the online archive, which gets posted every day around 3 o'clock, kitchener.citynews.ca, or better yet, check out the podcast of the show on the Seeker app. That's what we recommend for the best listening experience. Seeker, Seekr, Seek Your Sounds, and the sounds of Blacklocks joining us every Wednesday morning at 10 here on the show. You can get it on the podcast. Still to come, we have our weekly conversation with Rob Deutschman, who brings quite a bit of municipal and beyond political experience. We're going to talk, we've already talked on the show about the return of those prime minister's statues to the area around the township offices in Baden. But the decision itself aside, what goes into a decision like this? All of the work that council did. So you want to be a municipal councillor, eh? Well, we'll get you into the meeting in a life of a municipal councillor with Rob Deutschman, political R&D this morning at 11:30, so just over 30 minutes from now. And something else we do every Wednesday, and we've been enjoying so much this baseball season, we talk Blue Jays baseball with our good friend Ian Hunter. The Blue Jays Hunter joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio.
The Whiz Kids had won it, Bobby Thompson had done it, and Yogi read the comics all the while. Rock and roll was being born, marijuana we would scorn. So down on the corner the national pastime went on trial. We're talking baseball, Klazuski, Campanella, talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber and the Nuke. They knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
We're talking some baseball every Wednesday morning at 11 with our good friend Ian Hunter. He is the Blue Jay Hunter. And I said before the 11 a.m. update, we've been having so much fun talking Blue Jays baseball this season because the Blue Jays are a first-place team. And Ian, I'm not going to let my best buddy ruin any of this. He has been, I got so many messages from him yesterday after the loss in the opener of the doubleheader and then the loss after, and he is selling all of his stock. He never had any stock in the Blue Jays. He thought this run that they were on was a mirage, and now they're just crashing back down to earth. Hey, we're just going to pump the brakes on that, right? It's still a 4-game lead for the Blue Jays, and only Milwaukee has more wins than Toronto this season.
Yeah, that's true. The Jays are still tied with the Tigers for the best record in the American League, despite that 4-game skid. And yet, I guess you never want to be too high or you never want to be too low, right? So, like, if you were on social media yesterday, there was plenty of people saying, "Oh, this is the end of the Jays season," but those same people were also saying, "Oh, let's play on the World Series parade" last week. So it's the ebbs and flows of a Major League Baseball season. They always say it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And still, Jays still have a fantastic record. They've got a 4-game cushion against their next closest opponent. So, taking 1 out of 4 in Baltimore is not ideal. But, at this point, you take 1 over getting swept in a 4-game series.
And in fairness, the Yankees are a little bit banged up. That might help the Blue Jays a bit. But the reason that I'm trying to maintain a level head in all of this is because, at least from my perspective, it's not as though this has been, 15 straight wins for the Blue Jays. Yes, they're not losing a lot of games, but it looks to me like sustained quality play that got them to this point. So I've got no concerns really at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I looked last week, it was their second best stretch in franchise history. They were 19-4 or 19-5. I think the best stretch they've had, they've been 20-4 on a few occasions. So yeah, they're just playing really good baseball, like taking 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, 3 out of 4 against the Tigers. So, and playing quality opponents too, right? Like, it's funny, they're kind of playing down to their opponents right now. Like, they lost 2 out of 3 to the White Sox, and so far 3 to the Orioles here. But the teams that they probably might be facing in the postseason, they're actually performing pretty well against. It's just for some reason they can't figure out these bottom feeding teams. But Baltimore is a pretty decent hitting team despite their record and the fact that they're below 500, well below 500. So I'm not really concerned. I'm just, I think with the trade deadline coming up here on Friday, well, actually tomorrow, waiting to see if there's going to be some more additions here. They already made a trade yesterday for a reliever, Sir Anthony Dominguez. So it'll be interesting to see what the team looks like when they come back to Toronto on Friday.
I'll talk more about Dominguez in a moment, but just thinking on Baltimore, and I don't remember, Ian, if it was earlier this year or one of our chats last year, but the bottom line is there were a lot of comparisons, envious comparisons to the Blue Jays and the Orioles, because the Orioles seem to break it all down and get back to the top, quite frankly, way faster than the Blue Jays. And boy, oh boy, how those tables have turned this season. Yeah,
absolutely. They've kind of totally flipped the script. You saw the Jays really underperformed last year, and the Orioles are doing the same. They were a playoff team last year, and they're somehow in the very similar to the Atlanta Braves over in the National League. They're also a last place team, and they're not going to make the playoffs too. So I think it just goes to show you how quickly things can really flip, and the fact that the Jays, is it weird to say that they're overperforming? I don't think so. I think a lot of players are. The fact that this is all happening at once, you've kind of caught lightning in a bottle with a bunch of guys. I think that's kind of why the Jays need to go all in this year, because if you take this same cast of characters into next year, is that another first place team? I'm not so sure, but I think it's kind of a happy accident that they're there right now. And I think the front office needs to capitalize and really push their chips in and get as many players as possible to beef up for the second half.
You mentioned Sir Anthony Dominguez. You got to love the story. And it's actually Luke Schultz, who's filling in for Christine Clark on All News Mornings this week, mentioned it to me. And he wondered how common it was. It's happened before, so it's not unprecedented. But you got to love the story where in the morning, you're in the bullpen for one team, and by later that same day, you're in the bullpen for the opposite team because the Blue Jays have just acquired you.
Yeah, it was an odd sight to see him kind of walking through Camden Yards where he was just wearing an Orioles uniform, and they had to press him a Blue Jays uniform. It was a subtle thing on the game last night. They actually had his 8 upside down on his uniform because they were rushing so quickly. It didn't look bad, but it just goes to, like, I was shocked that he was in that game. So I think there was a trade. The Blue Jays had Melvin Upton Jr. a few years ago where the Padres were in town. They acquired him from the Padres, and he walked from the visitors clubhouse to the home clubhouse. So yeah, it's an odd sensation, but Dominguez is really going to kind of fill in this bullpen, which I think is the biggest need for the Jays right now. He's going to probably take the place of Jimmy Garcia, who's dealing with an elbow injury. We're not really sure when or if he's going to be back this season. So Dominguez is going to slot in kind of as like the 7th inning guy, maybe a setup guy here and there. He's got a really wicked fastball. I think he averages around 98 miles an hour. He does tend to walk quite a few guys, but he's got that swing and miss that you really want in the back end of the bullpen, and what you really want in October when you need shutdown innings and you don't want to put balls in play, you just want strikeouts. Dominguez is a really good add for the Jays.
And we hope, and I think expect, the Jays will add more. If you've got any players or areas of the roster on your wish list, by all means, let us know, and we'll find out what's on Blue Jay Hunter's wish list as we continue talking Blue Jays baseball on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m., Ian Hunter, who is the Blue Jays hunter, joins us to talk Blue Jays baseball. Yes, the Jays have lost 4 in a row, but hang on a second. Back away from the ledge, still a 4-game lead on the Yankees and tied with the Tigers for the best record in the American League. Only the Milwaukee Brewers and their 64 wins is better than the Toronto Blue Jays in all of Major League Baseball. 63-46 are the Jays, 4 games up on the Yankees, 5 games up on the Boston Red Sox. Ron sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. Can't call today, but ask Blue Jays Hunter this for me. What would you like to see the Jays do at this trade deadline? For Ron, it's pitching, maybe some long relievers when Max Scherzer or Jose Barrios, who's going today, just can't get the job done. Ron's looking long relief. We've got Sir Anthony Dominguez shoring up the bullpen. What else do you want to see the Blue Jays do, Ian Hunter?
So I think my ideal trade deadline for the Jays still involves probably 1 or maybe even 2 more relievers, an impact reliever. Like if you could get a closer like a David Bednar from the Pirates or Ryan Helsley from the St. Louis Cardinals, that would be ideal. And then another, middle relief arm, just something to kind of shore up the bullpen where you're not relying on, guys like Mason Fluharty or Braden Fisher. No offense to them, but, they're rookies, so they're relatively unproven. I don't know if starting pitching is necessarily a need right now because they seem to be pretty good. Up until yesterday, they hadn't needed a 6th starter. It's been over a month. Like it's all 5 guys have taken their turns in the rotation. Scherzer had a really good start his last turn, and Eric Lauer's kind of established himself as a legit guy. So maybe a swing man who could start a game here or there, but also could pitch in long relief. Someone like that, Adrian Hauser of the Chicago White Sox, that probably fits the bill. And then a right-handed bat, because there's a ton of really stellar left-handed pitchers in the American League, and you're probably going to face a lefty starter in the playoffs. So a veteran right-handed bat, Andrew McCutchen, Ramon Laureano, and Eugenio Suarez are probably the 3 names that I'm thinking of. So, it's not going to be the trade deadline of 2015 where the Jays got Troy Tulowitzki, David Price, Ben Revere, Mark Lowe, and LaTroy Hopkins, but I think they're probably going to end up loading up on pitching. Maybe they get like a bench bat, like a right-handed bat. I don't think it's going to be a starter per se because they have a glut of bats right now. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be relievers and maybe a swing man or a starting pitcher.
Starting pitching, I find your analysis interesting because I can't remember where I heard and or read it, but it was described as the Blue Jays just having a bunch of number 3s in their rotation, not a bona fide ace. And I've been thinking about that, and it made sense to me. And maybe you then go on the market and look for that ace because, yes, everything is going just hunky-dory. But when I was getting berated by my buddy yesterday, I said to him the same thing. It would be nice if the Jays just did have that guy in the rotation that when he takes the ball, you're going to snap this skid. And I don't feel as though that guy's there.
No, and especially as of late, we've seen a lot of not great starting pitching. They've given up 40 runs across their last 4 games. So part of that is starting pitching. Part of that is the bullpen. Their rotation has the 24th best starter ERA in the majors. So lots of room for improvement there. But if you go and get like a frontline starter, like a Jacob deGrom, for example, how do you shoehorn him in? That probably kicks a Max Scherzer or an Eric Lauer out, which I think would be fine. But maybe that's probably an off-season decision because Chris Bassett and Max Scherzer are free agents at the end of this year. But yeah, there's not a guy like who would you trust in game 1 of a playoff series for the Jays right now? It's really a toss-up between Bassett, Gossman, and Barrios right now. Maybe even would you feel extremely confident giving them the ball? Probably not, but I think the bullpen is a bit of a better area of strength this year than it was last year, so you probably shorten the game that way. But yeah, getting an ace starter would be nice. You're going to be giving up a ton. I just don't really kind of see them fishing in that pond right now, though.
All right, let's hear from our fellow Blue Jays listeners as we go to the phones. 00 George is with us. Hey, George.
Yes, 00 George indeed. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing well. How are you, George?
Good. Thanks, Ian. Ian, you had said something about who the Blue Jays would play if the playoffs started now, but I missed it. Who was it you were referring to?
I don't know if we had that conversation yet, but so they are currently tied with the Tigers for the best record in the AL. They would get a bye currently, so they wouldn't have to go into the wild card series, but I believe they would face whoever comes out of one of those wild card series. So that's like a Yankees or a Red Sox right now. I think right now they ideally you want the first or second best record in the AL, because then you do get that bye into the divisional series and you don't have to worry about the wild card series, which the Blue Jays have not had any luck in since 2020. They haven't won a playoff game. So I think if you can avoid that series at all possible, that would be best.
Yeah, and the other benefit, you're playing the lower end, would be a wild card team.
Yeah, for sure. And you can kind of set up your starting pitching a little bit better. Your guys get a little bit more rest. I think you'd rather be in the playoffs than not. But if they had their preference, you want to, and you also get some home. You're the home field advantage too, which the Blue Jays are a much better team hitting at home at Rogers Center than on the road. So you want to get those playoff games at home.
Oh, I sure hope it happens this year. Thank you very much, Ian.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
00 George, one of our regular listeners from Cambridge. What we had been talking about, I think what George was thinking of, is when you said the Jays are likely to face a left-hander in the playoffs. So that's why they get that right-handed bat.
Right.
And I got tripped up earlier thinking of Sir Anthony Dominguez's name, because I was thinking Sir and Dare, as in Anthony Santander. Where is he still on the team? What's going on?
Well, yeah, he is a Blue Jay. He is still a Blue Jay. The lack of updates, I don't even know if he started swinging a bat yet. So we're almost into August. At this point, I wouldn't expect to see him the rest of the season. It just doesn't seem to be feasible. Yeah, it sucks that year one has essentially been a write-off of this contract, but they've had guys kind of backfill. They're going to be getting Dalton Varsho back probably for Friday's game against the Royals. So you get a bit of power there and an outfielder. But yeah, it's crazy. They've got nothing from Santander. Jimenez has been hurt a couple times. Andres Jimenez, Jeff Hoffman had a rough game yesterday, and Scherzer is finally healthy. So almost all their offseason acquisitions have barely contributed, and yet they're in first place. So I think it's just a testament to how good the depth has actually been this year, picking up the slack where guys like Santander have given the Jays absolutely nothing.
Well, let's keep the good times rolling, or get them back to the good times, avoiding that sweep this afternoon as Barrios goes for the Jays against the Baltimore Orioles. And we'll talk to you, sir, post-trade deadline in 1 week's time.
Yep, sounds good.
Ian Hunter is the Blue Jay Hunter, joins us every Wednesday morning at 11 here on the Mike Farwell Show. I just got some really interesting news from Wilmot Township. That I mean, I'm a bit of a municipal geek, but this is significant stuff. I'll share it with you coming back on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So we were just talking to Blue Jay Hunter about, of course, the Blue Jays. Trade deadline tomorrow, maybe trading for an ace for the starting rotation. I think the township of Wilmot has just got an ace of their own. Now, I admit I geek out on municipal stuff, but this is a pretty big, hairy deal, at least from where I'm sitting. Township of Wilmot has appointed Jeff Wilmer as their new chief administrative officer. Now, the CAO, the chief administrative officer, is the most important municipal role within a local government. And Wilmot, frankly, has had some struggles in that department lately, the CAO's department. But Jeff Wilmer, I mean, this guy, as I said, would be the equivalent of a starting rotation ace in baseball. Great history and great track record as the CAO in the city of Kitchener, and most recently doing some great work since his retirement with a Better Tent City and helping that organization. So out of retirement and into the CAO's chair is Jeff Wilmot, or Jeff Wilmer to Wilmot Township, which I think is a pretty good score for Wilmot Township. Speaking of municipal politics, let's dive in with some political R&D. Rob Deutschman joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Little bit of Canadian content, Doug and the Slugs making it work by way of introduction to Rob Deutschman. Political R&D every Wednesday morning at 11:30. How do councils make stuff work anyway? We'll get into that. Good morning, Rob.
Hey, Mike, I know that term work might be foreign to you. I'm not sure, but...
Settle down. You're the one calling it in today, pal. Hey, just before we get into making it work, I don't know if you were able to hear it while on hold, but how about that score by Wilmot Township getting Jeff Wilmer as the new CAO?
Yeah, Jeff, I know through the Better Tent City, absolutely impressive individual through that. But Mike, it's interesting because I immediately thought about being up here in Prince Edward County. I bump into Gary Dyke every once in a while. And if you remember, Gary used to be the former CAO at the city of Cambridge.
Yep.
And he kind of retired or what have you back up here. But I know in chatting with Gary that he's been very busy working for various municipalities in a CAA role, whether it's on a temporary basis or a full-time basis. And as you know, there's like 440-something municipalities across this province. And I think it's hard to find good qualified people to take on what is an absolutely one of the most important roles in your community. And I think in a future show we should talk about the CAO role. I know we've briefly touched on what I say are the 12 most important positions in the region, but from an administrative standpoint, the CAO is so important in carrying out what happens in a municipality. And if you get someone that is good at the job, then you ensure a lot of things run very smoothly within your municipality. So I think that absolutely I agree with you. It's a huge score for Wilmot, and I think that's it's going to help them moving forward for sure. Because which municipalities had more in the news stories in the past couple of years than Wilmot.
Exactly. Not to mention the CAO's role itself, right? One dismissed, then an interim, and that interim disappears, and now here we are.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about the Palace intrigue, but I mean, it's so important to have someone, and they've had so many things that have fallen on their lap, not because of them in particular. I think they've been doing a great job in terms of handling a lot of these issues that have confronted them for new council. They've been doing, I think, an extremely good job for the constituents in Wilmot and should be given all credit. If any of them are, I could understand if some of them don't want to run again because they're dealing with particularly difficult issues. And I can tell you, even in other municipalities like the one here where I'm at, they've had issues about waterworks and debt and everything else. And I talked to some of the councillors who are first-time councillors who have said they're not running again because it gets very contentious within your community. And Councillor Solonen, or Mayor Solonen, for example, she'll talk about, or she doesn't really talk about it, but we've had discussions and stuff that, she'll go to the grocery store and bump into people. All of them will. You'll go anywhere in the community. You'll shop at the shops in downtown or uptown New Hamburg, whatever they call it, and you're going to bump into someone that's going to have an opinion on something. And we've seen through Facebook and delegations at their council meetings that's a community that's not shy about letting their councillors or their council know how they're feeling. And that kind of gets to, I guess, our discussion today, because I wanted to specifically talk about what I thought was, an exceptional job that they did in getting to some decision or resolution, or, well, not resolution, but another decision moving moving a big step forward on the Prime Minister's path. And I'll preface this by saying, again, I always revert back to this saying that former Chair Ken Sealing told me one of the first times we met, and it's that as a community representative, elected representative, and particularly as mayor, your circle of friends gets smaller. And you don't think about that, but when you run, but after you run and start to confront some of these issues that you have to deal with, and a decision has to be made, just like in a court of law, a judge ultimately has to make a decision after hearing all the arguments. You're not going to please everybody. And there's going to be people that are going to be upset. There's going to be people that are neutral. There'll be some that support you. But some people cannot let go of the upset. And after a while, you make a lot of these decisions. And it's why, they'll say a prime minister has a shelf life of 10 years or so. It's because after that length of period of time, you're making these decisions that are going to upset people. And eventually they say, okay, we've had enough of you, on with the new person.
When you talk about the decision to, and a pretty big step forward for Wilmot Township on the Prime Minister's path, this is an issue that the current council, of course, Rob, inherited when it was elected 3 years ago. And, how we feel about the decision, we'll leave that aside for now. But I'm looking at a 297-page agenda, of which this decision from Monday night around the Prime Minister's path was just one part.
Hey, Mike?
Yes? Are you losing? Okay, you know what? I think we're losing connection with Rob. So I'm going to put him back on hold, and I'm going to get Devin Robertson, our talented individual on the other side of the glass, to see if we can make a better connection with Rob Deutschman, and we'll take this break and continue. Political R&D. Forget the ultimate decision, the outcome Monday night in Wilmot Township. Let's talk about the process that got council to the point where it was able to bring forward this next step in the Prime Minister's path. The Mike Farwell Show continues. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wednesday mornings, 11:30, we take some time for a little bit of political R&D. The R for Rob, the D for Deutschman, doing a deeper dive into issues primarily local, because Rob's got experience in that regard. We were talking about Wilmot Township, Rob, and the Prime Minister's path, the latest step forward. But, putting aside the ultimate decision, I'm looking at a 297-page agenda from Monday night, and the Prime Minister's path was just one part of that.
Yeah, so first of all, we'll touch on that in a sec, but I just want to say, you had mentioned how they inherited this issue from a prior council. It was almost like, don't forget, this thing all started back in 2013 when the path was first brought to Wilmot after having been rejected by Laurier and the city of Kitchener. So one of the things I just wanted to mention was, a council will never complete everything they want to do within the term of that council. And you're never going to complete everything you want to do, even for as long as you're on a council. A council to me is like, it's like a track team. It's a relay team. You're carrying that baton from one council to the next council, and the baton is the affairs of your community. And so you want to make sure you don't drop that baton. You want to take care of that baton, and you want to make sure you make that handover as smooth as possible. And the issues of the community will continue on with the new council. And so it's just something that you inherit and you move on, just as another council after you will inherit some of your issues that you're still wrestling with. So, yeah, it's a continuing, organic, ongoing thing from one council to the next. But it's nothing really for blame or anything like that. People make decisions that they thought were right at the time. And, times change and values and perceptions change. And it just so happens then that you have to deal with it then as the new council going forward. But that being said, you're right. I wanted to point out that not only are we talking about Wilmot having to deal with this very substantial issue about the Prime Minister's path, but when I took a look at their agenda to look at it, I was like surprised at a lot of this. Well, not surprised, but I wanted to point out for people, there's a lot of issues that you as a councillor have to deal with. Not only are you dealing with the Prime Minister's path, but they're dealing with a whole bunch of issues like drinking water, drainage issues, issues that are like millions of dollars in investments, in expenditures, and how are where are the sources for all of this funding coming from? And now you're into a 3 to 4 hour meeting dealing with all these things, and you're a part-time counselor, full-time mayor, part-time counselor, dealing with all of these substantial, expensive issues that are going on. And so I just wanted to sort of point out for people that there's a lot of work that goes into being a counselor or being on council that has to be dealt with. And everyone wants to make sure that they're acting responsibly. So there's a lot of, you're going to have a lot of reliance on staff in terms of the reports they're providing. You're going to rely on your common sense and background and experience. But there's so much that has to get dealt with, and it's more than just that. But we often focus on the one big issue, but there's a whole lot of other issues that are way more expensive and have a significant impact, like providing drinking water, all those sorts of things, right?
But aren't we getting into then, Rob, kind of an age-old discussion around whether or not counselors should be part-time, the kinds of experience they should be bringing in? Because you're right, we're talking about corporations, like regionally, that's $1 billion, and you're the governance body for that corporation.
Yeah. Well, so you're getting into whether they should be part-time or full-time counselors, for example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and certainly City of Toronto it's a full-time council position with staff as well for each counselor. And, that is certainly something that one would talk about. The issues that arise there, though, is while it's full-time, and does that start to limit some people? Because counselors on a part-time basis will have their day job, so to speak, we'll say. And if you are no longer on council, you have your day job to fall back on, right? If you are a full-time counselor, you're subject to a review every 4 years from the people, which you could say, yeah, that's how it should be. But then as an individual, you're saying, okay, am I risking getting reelected or being without a job? And now what am I going to do? Like a member of parliament or a member of provincial parliament. What do they do after they've lost their job as an MP because of a vote? Is it easy to fall back into some consulting position? What's the pay? I have a family to take care of. I have kids that have to go to school. I've got my future in terms of retirement to think about. It certainly lends that way towards full time, but there's a lot of decisions that come with that considerations.
Very good points. And so, what advice would you give, Rob? Somebody, because we're a little over a year away from voting in a municipal election again. I'm sure there are people already considering perhaps putting their hat into the ring for a council seat. And I'm getting the sense that the advice might be, it's okay to not know what you don't know, because there are so many big, you probably have an idea coming in. I'm going to champion bike lanes. I'm going to champion a new community center for my neighborhood, something like that, motivating you to run. But you'll be faced with so many other things once you accept that position.
Yeah, I think, if you're individuals with life experiences where they've had to meet challenges that have come out of the blue, and how have you dealt with those challenges, are the sorts of skills that are necessary when you're elected and acting as a councillor, elected representative or mayor or regional chair, because you have to now think about examining the pros, the cons, the different angles, the cause and effect, the issues that relate to if you move one way, how is that going to impact other things? And if you've been in your life in situations where you've had to deal with surprises that have come up in business, and certainly if you're a business person, big, small, whatever, you're going to have challenges that you've had to deal with. I mean, it's almost like common sense, but what is common sense? Common sense to you and common sense to me is like, I say 12 over is enough. You say it's not enough on speed limits. But, what is common sense? So, but I think you have to consider that when you're going to go into this job and apply for this job, the more you have in terms of life skills, the more you have the ability to deal with things. And that's anybody. Whether you are, a lawyer like I was, or you're a tradesperson, all relevant, because you're dealing with life situations, surprises all the time, whether it's in business, whether it's in your family situation, issues with your kids, raising your kids, what do you do? So those are the sorts of people that demonstrate, if you know them, if they've demonstrated the ability to deal with these challenges, that's what you're looking for in that ability. And you have to know that events pop up, like we said last time, Wilmot Land Assembly, speed cameras. These are things that weren't talked about during the election. And you just have to you need people that can roll with it, but do it in a competent and well thought out manner.
I have a feeling, since you brought up speed cameras, that they will be an issue that defines the next municipal election.
I'm already telling people that this will be one of the defining issues in the upcoming election. Look at, Mike, you're using your platform to raise this issue constantly. And now we're starting to see more articles about this issue. What is the right approach? What is a different approach? And I think that we might start to see that some of the current, the current council, the regional council, is probably going to be taking a good hard look at this. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some changes. But that's okay, because that is how the sausage gets made. You implement a policy, you have to try it out, and then you see where you make tweaks and changes. And you're never going to implement right off the bat the best policy. I mean, it happens in legislation. It gets changed all the time. Amendments get made all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I said from the beginning, let's get this in place. Let's start to make the tweaks as we go along. And I think you're going to see some tweaking happening before the next election.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And yes, I just simply put, I agree completely that we will see some movement on this, just because I think people have realized it's not exactly as smooth a rollout as the region would have liked it to be.
If you want an example, Mike, just look at the speed limit change in Waterloo, right? It was 30 kilometers everywhere before the last election. A bunch of new people got elected. First thing they did after, and this would have been a response to what they were hearing at the doors, most of the wards were changed to 40 except for the center ward, like the uptown ward, stayed at 30. But they were all changed right away, shortly after the election.
And anybody elected, maybe if there's somebody newly elected to regional council in 2026, just to kind of bring this conversation full circle, get ready for those 300-plus page agendas that you as a quote-unquote part-timer are going to have to go through as you deal with all of these policies and processes.
Mike, they're going to get a budget book. They're going to get budget information that is going to be overwhelming. It's going to be, and to try to get this one to 5%, like I said last time, this is going to be one of the most difficult tasks they have facing them.
Interesting times indeed. As always, Rob, appreciate you joining the show. Enjoy the rest of your day and week in Prince Edward County, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, get back to work.
I will. Sitting right here talking, pal. Thanks, Rob.
Bye.
Rob Deutschman. He joins us every Wednesday morning, 11:30 for a little political R&D. You see what we did there? Rob Deutschman, RD. And Rob, because of his experience as the mayor of North Dumfries Township on regional council, he ran provincially, can kind of help us understand better how the sausage is made. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it's not every week that Rob Deutschman and I agree on political R&D, the segment we have every Wednesday morning at 11:30. But today is one of those unique days whereby we do agree completely that speed cameras will be a defining issue in the next municipal election. And it's likely, dare I say, it's a certainty that we will see some changes to our speed camera program in the months ahead. And I know, because I heard from you yesterday, I'm not trying to flog the horse, as I was accused of doing yesterday by at least one of you who's sick and ding-dang tired of hearing about speed cameras. I get it. I'm not trying to reopen that wound, but it's absolutely a pressing issue. You're hearing more about it in the media. You're seeing it in the paper. You name it. It is an issue that people are concerned with. And I guarantee you that regional council is listening. They're watching what's happening in other parts of the province. Vaughan, for example, which has paused its program after the backlash, etc. We threw it out there, and now we're going to refine it. I would submit to you that our program here in the region needs considerable refinement, but I'm quite confident that refinement is on the way, probably before the next municipal election. And, thinking on this Prime Minister's path in Wilmot Township and the words I shared earlier from former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, I wonder if the previous Wilmot Council feels differently today about those statues than it did during its time in office from 2018 to 2022. I'll play those comments from the former Prime Minister for you in the next hour, and we'll hear from you because Talkback begins on the Mike Farwell Show. You get to set the agenda on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Every day at the stroke of noon, we get an update from the 570 News Center, and then we begin our daily Talkback opportunity, which is your chance to do just that. Talk back to us, at us. You can offer some constructive criticism if you like, feedback, or you can reflect on an issue of the day that we've discussed on the show, maybe something that's going on in your part of the world that you think we need to know about. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. You make the call. You start the conversation. We listen. We'll start with Kyle. Afternoon, Kyle.
Afternoon. I apologize for yesterday.
Oh, my goodness. You were a hot mess yesterday.
I was a hot mess, but I'm a lot better now. And you know what I do know about today is that we have nothing to worry about the Blue Jays, my friend. They, you know what, they play 180 games in a season?
162.
100. That's a lot of baseball. A lot of baseball. And whether we lose, 3 or 4 in a row, whatever, we always seem to bounce back. And this is our year. Like, this is it, man. We're gonna be positive. The Jays are gonna continue to, they're gonna work on some things. As Blue Jays Hunter said, look at Anthony Santander. Like, he hasn't been around at all. And look how good the Jays have been working even without him. So I'm telling you, man, Jays are going. We got this. I'm going to Europe in a month. And when I come back, they'll be in the playoffs, and I can't wait, my friend. Thank you very much, Mike.
All right, Kyle. Thanks for not jumping off the bandwagon during this little 4-game losing streak. Tom, you're on Talkback. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
All these discussions that we're having about tariffs and everything.
Yes.
But nobody is taking it seriously.
Oh, I don't know about that.
The guy wants to take over the country, and this is the direction we should be heading.
Hang on. Yeah. Donald Trump wants to take over our country?
Well, yeah.
Okay. And then this is the direction we should be heading?
No, this is the direction that instead of talking about tariffs and everything and just respond to this in the other way, because we don't want to give up the country. And he can do this, and he's talking about this all over the world, and nobody's saying anything. Like, can you imagine if Russia or China would have come, or Iran and says we're going to take over America, Canada, what discussions we would, and nobody is, this is the real problem.
So you think, we should rally our allies and make a defensive military stand against the United States?
Not a military, but have a stand. Make this guy respond, like, all over the world. How can you take over a country? Like, he wants to take over Greenland. And this is crazy, Nobody in the world is coming to say anything about it, or nobody in the world is saying when another country comes out and tells it in front of your face.
All right. Well, listen, I hear where you're coming from with the threats to our sovereignty. And, I mentioned earlier in the show today, and I will still play the clip for you that I think is just so appropriate in the context of the conversations we're having in this community, particularly in Wilmot Township around statues of prime ministers. But Tom gets me thinking, and I'm going to reference again because I just found it so interesting, this conversation that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was a part of in Saskatchewan earlier this week. I'm sure it's a speaking tour of some sort, and he was well compensated for his appearance. But it was an interesting hour that I took a lot away from. And yes, hindsight's 2020, and at one point Stephen Harper even talked about how good a deal maker he was. I'm such a good deal maker. Just ask me how good I am at making deals. But I think a former prime minister has a thing or two to offer by way of perspective. In fact, this current Mark Carney-led Liberal government sought out the former prime minister, the former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, to get his advice on some things. And just connected to what Tom was saying, here's a little bit of what former Prime Minister Stephen Harper had to say about this trade war with the United States and maybe what it's making us or should be making us think about here in Canada.
I tell people that if a year ago the government had asked me, President Trump's coming in, he's talking about big challenges on trade, USMCA, tariffs, what would you advise? I would have said a year ago, this is a real opportunity for Canada to really deepen its economic and security partnership with the United States. However, when this government did actually ask me a few weeks ago my advice was the opposite. My advice was, yes, on the economy, we've got to kind of get something short-term worked out with the Trump administration, but this really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets.
And I think that's what Tom was kind of getting at here. And former Prime Minister Harper went further.
Canada has been, to be blunt, this is nothing against the U.S. The reality is, independent of the current disputes, Canada has been, to use business term, and I'm in the investment business now, we have been grossly overweight the United States as a country. And there is no reason for that. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous. And the other thing, in terms of security, my advice to the government is, yes, absolutely spend more on defense. We should have been doing it all along. But while we spend a lot more in defense, while the border is a shared responsibility, let's make sure we spend a lot more on defense so that we can be independently responsible for our own land, seas, and skies, independent of the United States.
Bring some applause from the audience. I think that's what Tom's getting at, right? Where's the response of a sovereign nation? Let's wean ourselves off of the United States economically, and by all means, let's take control of our own land, seas, and skies militarily. Spend that on defense. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper at a speaking engagement earlier this week in Saskatchewan. I found it rather illuminating on a number of fronts. This is your Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And right back to the phones we go. A busy Talkback Hour today. Remember, if the line you try isn't available, try another one. Pro tip, you might get in on that one. We've got a line available right now. As we say good afternoon to Mike. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike. I'd like to compliment you on that segment yesterday with Bardish Charger. I thought it was really well done. Although I may not share Bardish's political views, I found her to be a very effective MP when I lived in Waterloo. And at least she answered your emails and letters if you sent her one. So I'd like to compliment you on that segment there, sir.
Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Now on this tariff stuff here, you see all sorts of opinions out there where they say, well, if Pierre Poilievre was the prime minister, we'd have this, we'd have that. You also see Carney showing his weakness for consulting former prime ministers. Well, that's quite common because Justin Trudeau consulted Brian Mulrooney on the trade issue the last time. Harper himself consulted with Sean Chrétien on the Afghanistan stuff. So I don't see that as a sign of weakness. I see that as being an effective leader for getting multiple opinions and listening to different perspectives. Now, the only disappointment I have, Mike, I agree with Mr. Harper. We need to diversify our economy, and we need to have a short-term deal with Trump so that we can stabilize that relationship. However, what I would like to see, Mike, to tell you the truth, if something blows up on Friday, I want to see painful retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. because Trump will get up each day off his crapper and he will impose a tariff and modify the percentage and everything else. I think we have to get our allies together and hit back at him, Mike. That's my thoughts.
All right, Mike. Appreciate the call. I think he's hitting himself with the tariffs imposed on our exports to the United States as it is. We shall see how this all works out. Mayor Jake, good afternoon.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Not so bad. Yeah, I wasn't too happy with the answer I got yesterday about the crime rate. It didn't seem like there was any really accountability, which I'm not completely surprised from a career politician. But what I would have said to her is said, if we'll put it this way. So you want to eliminate drunk driving. So my question is to you, what do you do?
Ban alcohol.
Okay, well, that's a little extreme, right?
Yes, I do think the penalties for drunk driving should be far more severe. Yes.
So you want to eliminate distracted driving. So what did the government do to help eliminate distracted driving?
Brought in laws that made it illegal to text and drive.
Made tougher laws, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what's the difference here? Why can't we make it tougher to give a 10-year sentence to a guy that charged with assault with a deadly weapon? Oh, well, they have freedoms. Okay, well, they'll get their day in court. But I think the answer I was looking for was yes, we need to take accountability. The crime rate is out of control, and it seems like for drivers who make that go 50 over, they want to bend them over backwards and take them to the cleaners. But for a guy who takes a gun and goes into somebody's house, oh no, they get not a slap on the wrist, but they're not going to get us as much trouble and drown financially. It just doesn't make sense to me, in my opinion.
Mayor Jake, always appreciate hearing from you, and I'll grant that the question that you asked of MP Bardish Chagger when she was in studio with us for an hour yesterday, while she acknowledged she hears these concerns, she understands where we're coming from, she did not take a strong position on whether or not she felt as though bail reform was necessary. I mentioned it way back at the beginning of the show today during the Farwell Show 5 that premiers, 5 little headlines I give you at the beginning of the show every day, and premiers across this country putting pressure on Ottawa to follow through on commitments to bring in tougher bail rules. And critics say, well, hang on, there's no data to suggest that tougher bail rules are effective. And I said, well, let's just try it. How about we try it and then see? Because it's been such a long time that I can't remember upon which data they might be basing their criticism. So why don't we try it and see how it goes? Because I think, and from Mayor Jake's call, I feel confident in saying there seems to be some concern about the way things are working now. So let's see what happens if we do things a little bit differently. I don't know if that's unfair to ask. It doesn't seem like it. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You know how to get in touch with us on Talkback. It's always an entertaining hour during which we never know where the next call will take us. But I'm always willing to find out, so we'll answer the phones again and say good afternoon to Grant. Hello, Grant.
Yeah, good day. Did you watch the game, the game a couple of nights ago with Baltimore, where they had a cow in their stadium.
Wait, what? They had an actual cow? Like not Bart Simpson have a cow, man, but they actually had a cow in the stadium.
Yeah, and the commentators were saying, "Yeah, I'm not kidding." They said, and they showed the cow in the corner, and I didn't know at the time when this player was up at bat.
What was the cow doing there, Grant?
Well, there's a player on Baltimore that has a really weird name, and so when he got up, I thought they were booing him, but they were mooing him.
I like that.
His name is Cower.
Okay.
Cowser or something like that.
So they actually bring a cow to Camden Yards.
Maybe, I don't know how long it was there. Maybe, kind of funny, right?
It is kind of funny, Grant, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the call today.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day. That story is utterly ridiculous. You knew I had to go down that path. I mean, what else am I going to say when there's a cow in a baseball stadium? It makes me think of Bull Durham. I'm sure you know the movie, at least by name. It is the movie that basically defines every aspect of my life. It's not just baseball, it's a movie about life. And there is that scene where the guy hits a home run and hits a bull in the outfield. And when you hit the bull, you win a free steak. Anything that flies that far ought to have a darn stewardess on board. He didn't say darn, but I'm sanitizing for radio purposes. Anyway, talking about Baltimore Orioles with funny names. How about Sir Anthony Dominguez, the new Blue Jay acquisition from Baltimore? The beginning of the doubleheader, he's in the Baltimore Orioles bullpen, and in the second game of the doubleheader, he's actually pitching for the Blue Jays. But I like the name Sir Anthony. It's like his parents decided that he always should be addressed as Sir. So they put the S-E-R. I know you spell Sir, S-I-R, but they put the S-E-R at the beginning of the name. So he will always be Sir Anthony. If only my parents had thought ahead and called me Sir Mike Farwell, then you too would always greet me with the respect to which I am entitled. Did you not know this? I'm entitled to my entitlements. And one of them is being called Sir. Don't ever call me Sir. That makes me think of high school. We always called our teachers Sir at St. Jerome's High School. I'm not really sure why we did that, but it was always Sir. You can just call me Farwell. It's the Mike Farwell Show. Your Talkback Hour continues. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Each and every day between noon and 1, we open our phone lines to you for Talkback. You can share some thoughts on an issue we discussed on the show earlier. Maybe you didn't get through then, and you can now, and share those thoughts. Maybe it's something else entirely. If it's important to you, it's important to us. So we want to hear about it on Talkback. Afif, you're next. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sir Farwell.
Easy now, easy.
What I would want to say, we just did get a pitcher, Sir Anthony Dominguez.
Yes.
From the Orioles. But I'm hoping to get another one because what happened from like last 2-3 days? Oh my God, they need help.
Yeah, I mean, you can't base everything on the last few days, but I agree. I would love to have an ace in that starting rotation.
Well, I mean, either starting rotation or even especially like the relief pitcher because their relief is the one that's like really killing them a lot.
Yeah, and it hasn't been a great year for their closer, Jeff Hoffman, either, so we'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully, but that's all, man.
All right, Afif, thanks very much. We had Ian Hunter, the Blue Jay Hunter, on the show earlier today, as we do every Wednesday morning at 11. Good times for Blue Jays fans. Canada's baseball team right now 4 games ahead of the New York Yankees for the lead in the American League East, and tomorrow is the MLB trade deadline. And I suspect it will be a different-looking team that returns to Toronto to open a series against the Kansas City Royals on Friday. So buckle up, enjoy the ride. Jay's just getting underway now against Baltimore in the finale of this 4-game series. Mark, you're on Talkback. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Just want to say I really enjoyed that story about the turtle laying eggs on the pitcher's mound.
How about that, eh? Ding dang
I've never
turtle.
heard that in my life ever.
There you go. In the pitcher's mound and over by the bench, and they can't relocate them, so you can't use Optimist Field at Riverside Park in Cambridge for the next 6 to 8 weeks.
And I think they did the right thing. They closed down the diamond. Right, Mike?
Yeah, and the city tried to relocate, incubate those eggs and relocate the turtles to an animal care shelter, but there was no room there. So, yeah, I think the city's doing the right thing.
Maybe they got a new pitcher, the turtle.
Maybe.
Okay, Mike.
All right, Mark. Thanks very much. Glad you enjoyed the Farwell report earlier today. Something we're working into the show a little more often around 10:45. Just go a little bit behind the headlines, maybe find some slightly below the radar news. And one of the stories we shared today is that one from Riverside Park in Cambridge, where the turtles have taken over the ball diamond. I'm sure it sucks for people that were hoping to play some ball there in the near future, but the habitat and the safety of the turtles comes first in this case. Terry, you're next on Talkback. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. About what Grant was saying, I saw that on the highlights a couple of days ago. It went really quick, so I didn't catch the whole story. But there was a cow there at the Camden Yards, out in the cheap seats, and it had a handler. It was on a rope, and there was some woman holding it. So
is this like the Billy Goat curse that got the Chicago Cubs back in the day?
Well, it would be the reverse, because they didn't allow the goat into the stadium, so the guy cursed the team. So they say,
Gotcha.
According to urban legend. So this would be the reverse. I guess the cow was there, so they didn't want to bring up a curse upon themselves. So, hey, Mike, you were saying the other day you have your all these numbers. You have the Farwell force.
That's right.
I don't know if you would have been old enough to remember this, but Franco Harris, like his mother was Italian, and they used to be these guys that they used to sit at Three Rivers Stadium. Some of the fans, they would have an Italian flag, wear these military helmets, and they were called Franco's Italian Army. I don't know. Do you remember that?
I do not remember that, but I kind of dig it.
Yeah, it was around for a few years there, mid 70s. But you can have that too. You can have all your numbers on all your callers or listeners can have military helmets, put their numbers on it. You can call it Farwell's Radio Army.
There you go.
And I think Alex would wear number 99. He's like the Wayne Gretzky of callers, no?
Who is?
I mean, Alex. He called yesterday. He's very thorough. It doesn't mean you always have to agree with him. I don't. But
no. He's an infrequent flyer, though. But listen, if he asks for a number, he can have one.
99. I mean, he's very thorough.
We're way past 99, pal.
Oh, are you? Well,
we're at 131 right now.
Oh man, you didn't save 99 for him. That's unfortunate.
Well, anyway. you got to claim these things are coveted. You got to claim them, Terry.
You have to claim them. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you were just handing them out like candy.
No, well, I am, but you have to get in line. You see, I'm up to 132 actually as of today.
So you underestimated yourself. You always kept saying 42 or 43. So now you got triple that. So there you go, Mike. Pat yourself on the back. You are the true legend, Sir Michael Farwell.
Okay, settle down, Terry.
Okay, Mike. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. It is kind of funny the way it all started and then took on a life of its own, which is exactly what Terry said. The running gag on this show that I started was that, we've got 30 some odd listeners, and every once in a while one of you would call and say, oh, I'm the next in line. So eventually we climbed up to 45 a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, wow, like pretty soon we're going to get to 50. And then that weekend I met a gentleman by the name of Andrew, and he said, I'm number 46. I never get to call because of my job, but I'm listening every day from 9 till 1. Love the show. I want to be listener 46. I said, absolutely. Welcome aboard. Thanks for listening. And then I thought it would be fun. You know what? Let's just make this official. 46. Okay, let's fill in numbers 1 through 46. And well, some way, somehow, it went well beyond that, to the point that we just added our good friend Rob to the list this morning at 132. I'm going to use this in my next contract negotiation, let me tell you. But we have, because I love my alliteration, determined this to be Farwell's force. A force for good, a force for change, a force to be reckoned with. And we are 132 strong and counting as we continue Talkback this afternoon on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just had one of my colleagues from down the hall at Chime 96.7 poke her head in the studio and say, I'm going to Bulk Barn. Do you want anything? Most people say I'm going to the coffee shop. You want a coffee or something like that? Bulk Barn. Where do you want me to start? Love me some chocolate-covered almonds. Oh, man. So many of the things. Instead, I declined. But, that makes me think of something. Just going back to Terry's call on Farwell's force, which now boasts a membership of 132, along with being a force for good and a force for change and a force to be reckoned with, we're going to call upon you for shenanigans. We're going to get you, maybe you could call Adele's show one afternoon on Chime 96.7 and say, come on with your coming on. I listen to the Farwell Show. Kind of like calling a radio station and saying Baba Booey, but I think that's been done by some other host, some other place. So we'll just, we'll get some come on with your coming on to some other radio shows around town just to punk them a little bit. We'll show them what Farwell's force is made of. Let's continue Talkback with Greg. Afternoon, Greg.
Hey there, this is 3 plus 8 equals Gilbert Perot, Greg.
Wait, what? Oh, wait.
That was your idea. You gave me 38 and you said 3 plus 8. I couldn't have 11. For
okay, thank good, because I'm looking at 83. I'm looking at 11. You are indeed number 38. Member number 38 on Farwell's force, my friend.
Yeah, I'm very honored. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for being there.
Yeah, okay. And then before you were saying you don't want to be called sir, I could think of some names to call you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, maybe another time. But, okay, just help me on this tariff thing. The other day there was a number saying about how much it's cost Canadians already or something like that.
Sorry if I missed the number, but okay.
I thought it was something like billions or something like this, but then I thought, okay, well, if it's going to cost Canadians, that means, I thought the whole tariff problem is that tariffs that Trump's putting on, so in other words, anyway that normally exports from Canada is going to have less buyers because of how much it's going to cost. Is that correct?
If our products are tariffed, our producers are paying more to have those products sent to the United States.
Right. Say instead of 100, it might be 125.
Right.
Kind of thing. And therefore less sales because
correct
of the higher. Okay. But then now when they say it cost consumers, is that the same thing, or is stuff coming from the U.S. also jacked up? And
well, it depends on if we retaliate with tariffs of our own.
Well, that's the thing. There was some number out there reported so far, like X billion so far, expected to get even higher. But I'm thinking, well, that means what happened to buy Canadian? I guess you can't buy Canadian for everything you need in life, but it almost sounds like, well, then, all right, if there's huge numbers out there, that means people are is tariffs coming? Say the U.S. sends whatever up here, they're tacking on something too, but Canadians are still buying it. Is that correct?
Your guess is as good as mine, Greg. Okay. I can't speak to your shopping habits.
Yeah, I was just shocked when they said X billion or whatever it was already costing Canadian consumers. I think, well, the Canadian consumer, if they're buying in Canada.
I think, Greg, these are estimates over the long term.
Okay, I thought there was a number so far with an estimate of getting even worse, and that's why I just want to clarify if I even know what this whole tariff concept properly. But okay, no, because I just thought everyone's stressing buy Canadian, but then if also this huge number of already cost consumers, that must mean consumers are choosing to buy something with extra tariffs on it. If I got it right, maybe I'm wrong.
I guess that is what's happening in this regard, and it is a big tangled mess, to be sure. I don't hate the buy Canadian idea, though. Stick with it. Francis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, brother. I'll call you a different name.
Okay, sir.
Sir. Oh, that they used to call my dad sir. Anyway, I have a way, if they would only listen, but people don't want to listen, our great truck drivers that go south, let's have a holiday. There's a holiday starting at 4 o'clock this afternoon and send nothing down there and see if we can get our bulldog down there to pay attention when he looks at the stock market. But do it, because we're gonna. You can't charge something that you don't get.
Well, but what are we going to do with all the stuff we produced, and how are we going to pay those truck drivers and all those other things?
You're going to pay through the nose anyways with him up and down like a yo-yo. Just stop sending anything for a couple days, and bite the bullet, and maybe he'll shape up. God bless.
God bless, Francis. Thanks for the call. We've got some ideas as that trade deadline looms on Friday. Jim, good afternoon. You're on Talkback.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. So just calling in regarding the live barn in the region.
Yes.
I'd like to provide some insight. I'm a live barn subscriber. I watch a lot of the minor hockey and sports programs on it. Great service. A lot of grandparents I know that aren't local watch their grandkids on it and are also subscribers. I'm just a little confused as to being out in public and the expectation of being recorded and that being acceptable when you walk into a facility. All of these facilities have surveillance cameras throughout them already, through the city or through that organization. What's the difference with the live barn? Is it just because it's a third party? But I would see all of the video going to servers or to some sort of a database, as well as every public building I've been in that does have cameras, it's posted, alerting people that there are cameras in the building and photos are being taken. So I'm not sure where the complaint came, but myself, I use the live barn service, and now with my kids in camps this week, actively sports, I would like to watch them, and now unfortunately I can't until this is resolved. So
wait, so you were actually accessing the live stream to watch your kid at camp?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Oh.
they're in some hockey camps, and we'd watch remotely and see how they're doing. And I also use it to observe the instructors and if the quality, if I'm being sold what I was told. So it can be used both ways, I think, as a kind of a safety net for both ways.
But you knew going in then. You're talking about a summer camp for hockey, so you knew this was being streamed.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I knew that the facilities all have the cameras in them. It's posted when you walk in the doors of every ice surface or sports surface. That there's signage there. So I access the service. Unfortunately, now I'll probably put my subscription on hold until the region or each city can rectify it. But yeah, unfortunately, it's a service now that I can't access for now. But so.
All right, Jim. I mean, listen, I appreciate that and some good insight into it. I would think that to your one question, the fact that it's a third party is absolutely part of the concern. The cameras that we are constantly surveilled by, I agree. It's something that I think we've just come to accept in life. But these cameras only operate in certain areas. And in this particular case, it would have been children at day camps, summer camps that were not anticipating being live streamed. The cameras should have been disabled at those points and were not. So I guess we'll see how this all sorts itself out. But I'm glad to hear that the service was useful to you in the past. As we continue Talk Back this afternoon on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And that hour is quickly drawing to a close, but still time to hear from you. Let's get right back to the phones. Jesse, good afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Farwell.
Hello, Jesse.
My mother would have taught me to say it. My husband and I haven't got our numbers yet, but we've been listeners for years. You are the one who got me through my maternity leave watching you on Rogers in the morning.
Come on now.
Sleepless nights and you talking up, getting me riled up, ready to go for the day.
Well, you know what? You probably have the smartest kid in town, Jesse, because weaning your child on this show, I can't think of anything better, quite frankly.
Probably. I just actually wanted to call in and talk about how the Farwell Forces sounds like another group I'm a part of called the Kick Club, which is a community for a popular YouTuber who hops on to charity live streams, helps them meet their goal, and then runs away.
Come on.
Perhaps you could direct the forces to good and not just pranks, especially if there's cystic fibrosis things going on.
Okay, I like where you're coming from. I mean, there's always room for a little bit of shenanigans, but yes, we will be a force for good, I promise.
Have a good one.
Jesse, I'll get you and your hubby down at 134 and 135 on the list, okay?
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Great to hear from you today. Thanks for joining along. John, you get the last word on Talkback.
I see. I take it I am addressing His Grace Lord Farwell.
Oh, my goodness. It's getting out of hand now, John.
Yes, Trump's tariffs, we have to endure them. We should put on reciprocal tariffs, which will put counter pressure on him. But he's in for 4 years. His time is short, and his wrath is great. So better get down, used to it. It's going to happen. And buy Canadian by all means. We should have been doing that all along, so it sure can't do any harm.
It certainly can't. And thank you to my loyal subject. I mean, if you're going to start with Lord, that's how I'll sign it off. Speaking of that trade deal and the tangled web we are still trying to untangle. We'll be talking about that on the show tomorrow, of course. It's Thursday. That means Gary Chalk will be here with Living Retired and lots more on our program tomorrow. So let's meet back here tomorrow morning at 9. Okay? My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.